Hey folks, welcome to Black Gumbo. I have a new list of questions. Let's do gardening Q&A, episode 8. Well, here I am in the backyard. I'm fighting between thunderstorms. It's wet and rainy today, but it's a good time to do a gardening question and answer. We're gonna have an early April garden tour next week. Going to show you how to plant a bare root fruit tree soon, do some other little tasks, but right now I've got some questions, and the first question is this. Kate Barrett asked today, I'd love to see a third installment of the nutsedge saga. How did it go? Did we successfully kill them for good? She got all kinds of garden beds overrun with nutsedge. Yeah, if you follow my channel and you saw last year, this bed right here was completely weed bound. It had laid fallow for a year, and I didn't use it in one of my gardening seasons, and it just got completely impacted with nutsedge. And if you know about nutsedge, it's actually a really invasive plant, and it grows in many ways by spreading rhizomes, by having little starchy nuts under the ground. That's what causes them to be so pervasive and persistent, is you can pull the plant and you'll snap the plant off of that nut and it'll just grow another plant. They spread by seed if they get large enough. It's just a really invasive plant. And so yeah, what I did was, and I'll link you to the video, what I did was I put agricultural molasses over the top of this bed to really give a kickstart to the bacteria and the soil life down there. The idea was get a really giant population of these bacteria. When the molasses ran out and those bacteria had eaten all that and bloomed into an enormous colony of bacteria, then once there's no more molasses, they go to work eating those little nuts down in there. At the same time, we deprived them of light. We put cardboard, several layers of cardboard down, and then mulched over it and left it there all summer. It worked. It worked very well. We came back and I showed you in my War on Nutsedge 2 about 6 months later that we didn't have any nutsedge in any significant number. So now that it's been a whole nother growing season, what's going on? Let me show you. This bed, especially in the middle, was completely bound up with nutsedge. You can see now that there are some weeds here and there, but they're broadleaves. They're not that triangular nutsedge. There's some Bermuda grass creeping in from the side. Now I do have nutsedge like right here. This is a nutsedge, and you can see though it's in the hole. We didn't really cover the holes very well, but what it does is all this stuff down here, this nutsedge, sends its rhizomes underneath. So it's going to come back. It's just the fact that we got it under control. Okay, that's the key. You've got a little colony of it right here, and you'll see they fill this hole, and they will send shoots and runners and rhizomes and fill this hole, and they're eventually going to get into there again. But the thing was, this is far less than what we had before, and I can manage this. I can come in and flame weed this, and once you knock these nutsedge down about, I've read it's about a dozen times, they'll deplete their resources underground and die off. Here's a trouble spot though. I have nutsedge that's inside of this crack, and as much as I try to flame weed it or pull it out, it's going to still continue to invade my garden a little bit. Well, you know, at least it's not a big giant, you know, mat of it like we had before. A big bunch of Bermuda grass here. I dig that out when I get around to it. And these guys, these are morning glories, and they're very invasive as well. Those are my three biggest weeds right there. Morning glory, which I actually like, but they are kind of pesky. Bermuda grass, which I just kind of dig the clump out and try to keep it from going in the garden like that and sending its runners over into my garden. I take care of that when I see it. But if it's just growing in here, I'm kind of lazy about that. And then of course the nutsedge is trouble as well. Here's some more Bermuda grass trying to go into my garden. But overall, the war on nutsedge worked. Ooh, I've had a cat digging in here. That makes me mad. Okay, I had a couple of questions come up about my sweet potatoes, some things that I didn't cover in my last video. So I'm going to treat this as one question, some more info about your sweet potatoes. CLT Serendipity asks, do you start with regular non-organic sweet potatoes from the store? Or do you have to buy one of the expensive organic potatoes to start with? I got the same question from several people, and no, what we started with were the organic potatoes from the store. We only bought like 4 or 5 of them. You could start with just 1 or 2, and you'll get dozens of slips. But yeah, we bought organic, and the reason is I have read, I can't confirm it, but I've read that a lot of these potatoes, sweet potatoes, are treated like regular potatoes, they're irradiated or they're sprayed with a sprout inhibitor, because no store owner wants their potatoes sitting on the shelf growing ugly, gnarly sprouts, because then nobody's going to buy them and the quality is going to go down. So yeah, we bought the organic ones just to see that, just to have that peace of mind knowing that they were unlikely to have been treated with a sprout inhibitor. Annie Gaddis, man, you've asked a lot of questions, Annie. I'm so grateful. What would happen if I had just put the whole potato in the ground? And Brohan also said, so just burying the potatoes was not enough to get new spuds. No, the reason is these are tubers, and the tuber, what happens is the plant grows up and the leaves draw energy from the sun and from the resources in the soil, and they build these sugars and they store them as carbohydrates in the tuber. And then that's what the plant uses in times of trouble or stress to grow from. It's got it easy. Once it's got tubers, the next year it can just grow off the energy in those tubers. So if you put a whole potato in there, plants will grow like crazy, but they're just drawing energy and resources from the tuber and not really worrying about putting on more tubers for you. They're worried about putting on flowers and flowering and making seed, because they're morning glories, and they're going to put on a bunch of beautiful flowers for you, but they're not going to worry about putting tubers on. You got to start with the plant that has no tuber, because then the plant's like, man, we got to store up resources for the winter. We got to store up resources for next year when we're gonna need, starch. So yeah, it doesn't really work so well to just plant the potato in the ground. Douglas asks, is there any use in having a metal dibber beyond it looking cool? A metal dibber is a little tool that I use to make holes in the ground to plant in. And no, there's no other reason to have one made of metal other than it looked cool, and you put it on your Amazon wish list and someone in your family bought it for Christmas for you. So yeah, I like my little dibber. It makes planting easy. I don't have to dig. I can just punch a hole in the ground. Especially if you do no-till, no-dig gardening, it's very handy to have that. I learned about dibbers from Charles Dowding in the UK. You can use an old broomstick or a sharpened stick. Just poke a hole, and a lot of people who plant bulbs use dibbers. I just use it to plug in plugs now, and I don't have to use my trowel. I can just punch a hole and widen it out as much as I want. It's real easy. So yeah, dibbers, they're a thing. So this is a dibber. It's basically just a stick with a point at the end, and it's used to make holes in the ground. But you can use it for other things. We're killing zombies. So the way you use a dibber is, if I wanted to plant a plug right there, I'd just stick it down in there. Real easy. Move it around, and I have a perfect hole. I can put a plug right in there. I didn't have to get my trowel out. I didn't have to disturb the soil. I didn't have to dig a deep hole. It's just a dibber. So yeah, but if I had a trowel like Samuel's doing, I'd have to dig a hole and disturb all the soil and disturb the worms like that guy right there. Yeah, I like the dibber. If you're doing soil and you're tilling and all that, it doesn't matter so much. But if you're doing no-till soil, this is the way to make a non-obtrusive hole, to put a plug right in. The dibber. Okay, so it's so windy out there, I have to come into my garage to answer this next question. Christopher Van Zant and several other people have been commenting on my pruning peppers video from 2017. That's the video that launched me finally into commercialization on YouTube. That's still the most popular video, even though it's one of my lousiest videos. People seem to love it. It's controversial. Some people get on there in the comments section, which is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments long, and there's just all kinds of dialogue going on. But that video, when you see controversy, when YouTube sees controversy on a video, it promotes that video. That's been really something. So the question is, Christopher Van Zant asks, so pruning makes the plant grow lateral, that's side to side, and bear more fruit earlier? Pruning or pinching the pepper. What we do is, when a pepper plant is young and it's about this tall and it has 6 to 8 sets of true leaves, you cut off or pinch out the growing bud, the top growing bud, the very top of the plant. If you have one stem, you pinch that off, and that deals with apical dominance. It deals with the growth hormone that helps the plant, encourages the plant to grow tall and straight. And what it does is it causes the plant then to force out side growth from the suckers. Like if you would have a tomato plant, you see the suckers in the crotch. If this is the main stem and this is a leafy branch, there's a little sucker right there. It forces those to start growing out and makes the plant more bushy. Well, it also makes the plant have more fruit-bearing vines. And so what you're doing is you're strengthening the plant in terms of its bushiness and its structure. It'll still grow tall, but you're pinching the plant so that it doesn't just grow one strong main vine and put on 5 or 6 peppers and you're done. Pinching a plant is controversial. Some people say you shouldn't do it. Some people say you should. Bonnie Plants pre-pinches your plants for you. If you go and buy a pepper at the store, you can look on there and see they've been pinched. So I almost always pinch my peppers or prune them. So no, it doesn't make the plant grow fruit earlier. In fact, it probably makes the plant grow fruit a little bit later. But what it does is it causes the plant to put on more side growth, lateral growth, as you said, Christopher. And that lateral growth includes fruiting branches. And on those fruiting branches comes more fruit. Here's a plant that I would not have topped, and I didn't top. It had plenty of naturally occurring main branches. It had 3 of them. I don't know if you can see. It had this one, and there's one on the other side. And that caused this plant to just naturally kind of vine out, and I've got a lot of jalapenos on here. These are ready to harvest almost. Yeah, and it's got a lot of fruit coming on. But you can see a plant with a naturally occurring branching growth habit puts on a lot of bushiness here, and this is what we're after when we pinch our tomato or pinch our peppers. Now, one thing you have to know is that a lot of pepper plants, especially the larger pepper plants like bell peppers, ancho peppers, poblano, ancho, same thing. But those larger peppers, if you pinch the plant and you have more fruiting branches, sometimes they'll grow smaller fruits, but more of them. And for me, that's what I'm after. I'm after a lot of smaller fruits and a whole lot more of them, and that's what I want. So I've had a lot of other people also ask me then in that same video comment thread, how many times should you prune your pepper plant? Should you prune your pepper plant just once and that's it, or do you prune it throughout the season? I prune or pinch. Some people prefer the word pinch. I just top my peppers once when they're young, and that encourages side growth and helps them branch out and develops a good strong pepper plant. I don't pinch them or prune them any further. Some people, I guess, if you're into really micromanaging the growth of your plant, you could take another one of those main branches and pinch it and force more growth out. But I don't know personally how that would work out. I've never done that. I just do it once. Dope smokers, as much as you guys comment on my threads, you guys are the experts at making more foliar growth. And if you pinch and you manage your plant, you do put on tons of foliar growth and leaves. And if you're growing for leaves, that's what you want. If you're growing for fruit, however, I don't think that's what you want. So yeah, I would only do it once personally until the next year. I also had a question. Let me see if I can find it. Somebody asked me a question about peppers being perennials. I've shown you this guy before. This is a pepper plant that is left over from last year. This is a veteran, and you can see it's already putting on fruit. This is a garden salsa pepper, and I've got fruit coming in, and I've actually already eaten off of this one. There's some fruits down there. I need to weed it, but yeah, if you prune it back, you can see I trimmed back these main branches, and it pushed out all this side growth. All this is new growth. Let me show you another one. This is the pepper I've showed you before. This is a jalapeno, and you can see I just trimmed off some of the side growth. This plant was, I don't know, about 4 feet high, but I knocked it back, and it's starting to push out stuff like this, side growth. There's some new side growth off of that main branch. I don't know, can you see? So here's the main branch where my finger's on, and the side growth came from here as soon as I trimmed that off. And so it's putting on blossoms now, and we'll have some jalapenos. Here's another that made the cut from last year, survived through the winter, and it's already got fruits on it. You can see they're coming in. I forgot what it is. I'm gonna have to go look it up. But you can see all I did was trim off the dead growth that the frost cut back, and it started pushing out all this side growth along these stems here. You can see there's some side growth coming in right there. And all these fruiting branches, there's a good example. I trimmed it, and from the sucker came another fruiting branch, and it's already producing. So yeah, you can save these if you get them and they live through the winter. You can save these, and they act as perennials. So yeah, that's 3 pepper plants that are left over from last year, and I remember it was Angela Shepard who asked if you could do that. So yeah, you can. So that's 3 pepper plants that you can actually see made it through my winter, and I didn't even take them in. I just left them out here. They kept growing. We had a pretty mild winter. We had a couple of frosts, couple of freezes that knocked back some of that growth, and I just trimmed it off. And then I shaped up the plant, and it put out all that side growth. And now you can see I'm getting pepper plants that I didn't have to work for this year. I did all the work last year, so yeah, you can do that. Okay, one more. CB at CB's Greenhouse and Gardens has a tip for us. He says one can hand pollinate to ensure that the fruit on tomatoes takes off if the bees are not around in enough numbers to get the job done. Man, y'all go check out CB's Greenhouse and Gardens, his channel, especially if you're into aquaponics, man. They are the masters at reusing political signage. So yeah, go check out CB. CB is right. So I have behind me some tomato plants. This one right here has hundreds of blossoms. And there are ways that you can help out the pollination process on these blossoms. Let me show you. Okay, so all these tomato blossoms are self-pollinating. These flowers will pollinate themselves, but they need a little vibration and a little shaking. And that will help to knock the pollen off the male parts and make it come in contact on the female parts. Right now it's so windy that the wind is doing that real good for me, but I like to come out here and just kind of tap on my cage. Good vigorous tap, and that usually takes care of pollination for you. Larry down in Deep South Texas Homestead, I think it's Deep South Texas Homestead. It's Deep South Texas. Look up Deep South Texas. Larry uses an electric toothbrush and comes out and it vibrates the tomato plant, and that's an ingenious method. I don't have an electric toothbrush to spare. That's reserved for my teeth, but I'll come out and just vibrate the plant, and that'll usually do it for me. All right, so there's our question and answer for episode 8. Not a big one, but you know, you guys have been asking lots of good questions, and now that spring is really in gear, it's time to ask questions and learn if we need to garden. A lot of you in zones north of me, I'm in zone 9A, are behind my schedule, so my videos come out, I hope, at a time that can help you. If not, you know, there's knowledge for next year. Yeah, so it's time now in zone 9A to start thinking about what you're going to put in for your summer garden, and you should already be sourcing seeds, sourcing plants, especially now when so many seed supply stores are shut down for the virus epidemic. A lot of them are opening up again today. As of this video's recording, I found a couple of seed companies that I expected to be open were closed and restocking, but a few of them are still open, and I thank you in the comments for tipping me off to those. So yeah, there we go. Thanks for joining me on Black Gumbo Southern Gardening. Please like our channel, subscribe to our channel, and if you haven't looked at us on Facebook or Instagram, please do. Hey, happy gardening to you. See you next time. Bye-bye.